What's the best racing sim out there right now? iRacing or Le Mans Ultimate? That's the big question, and today I'm going to give you a real-world driver's perspective comparing the brand new Mercedes AMG GT3. Let's talk feel, physics, tire model, and what it's actually like to drive these two versions of the same car. Let's start with iRacing. The Mercedes GT3 in iRacing feels sharp. The steering input feels tight, it's responsive, and you really feel that sense of direct connection to the road. It's especially noticeable under braking. There's a proper transition in the brake release phase, and it really helps you feel the balance of the car through the entry of the corner, and it just feels right. The cold tire performance is also spot on. It's not overly grippy or too slick. It's balanced and builds grip naturally, and when the tires peak, you can really feel that threshold of maximum grip. Just gives you confidence to know when you can push. Now, not everything's perfect. Through the middle of the corner, the car still doesn't quite move on the tire sidewall the way it would in real life. It's still a bit too rigid, and it feels like it lacks a bit of compliance on the sidewall and is missing a bit of softness. But overall, iRacing feels pretty refined. It's like a sim that's been developed over years with feedback from pros and serious sim racers, which it has. Now let's talk about Le Mans Ultimate, which is built on the R-Factor 2 engine from my understanding. The AMG GT3 is here. It's a completely different beast, and it's something that the community's been waiting for a long time, and I know that I have been waiting for a long time as well, because now we get to do this comparison properly with a car that I've driven and drive consistently in real life. So this is really cool to be able to finally compare apples to apples, iRacing and Le Mans Ultimate, with a car that I'm driving so frequently, so I can really give you that real-world driver perspective and the feedback that you're all looking for. Here's the thing. In Le Mans Ultimate, you have to drive the AMG so hard, and that's a little contrary to the way it's driven in real life. The car only seems to be working well when you're super aggressive on the brakes, trailing with a lot of pressure all the way down to the apex, and it's really the only way to make the front respond. Even then, it still feels like you have to fight to get the car rotated, which isn't always the case in real life. And keep in mind, this is all done with baseline setups, and I didn't really want to fine-tune the setup to get the optimal balance. I just wanted to kind of feel what the vehicle dynamics were rather than trying to optimize a damper click here and there. So this is purely based on how the car feels physics-wise, tires, platform, dynamically, what's happening with weight transfer. So that's what I'm taking into account here. It has way too much understeer. It's like the front end just gives up the second you start adding a little bit of throttle. The car feels numb and lazy, especially on the initial turn-in. And it's almost like the weight transfer, the vehicle dynamics in general are way too exaggerated. Keep in mind, I am working with both LMU and iRacing on giving feedback. They have both asked for my feedback, and I'm happy to help both platforms because ultimately this is great news for the sim racing community and the industry because you have real world pros that are driving the cars in real life, not just myself, but other guys like James Baldwin. I know that has been working with both sims to help develop the car and to make it feel as close as possible to the real one, because ultimately it really comes down to real drivers that are going to be able to give proper feedback. No matter what anybody says, it is real drivers that are going to give the feedback of what the car is actually doing because it's a simulator. We're trying to simulate what the real car does. And it is interesting because you need to find a nice compromise between it being too realistic and not realistic enough because you want it to be fun for just an average driver to jump on the sim and to have fun. Now, speaking about just being able to jump on the sim and have fun, that's something I'd like to touch on a little bit later because I think one sim is a little bit nicer and easier to just jump on and go. It's a bit easier for the average consumer of a simulator racing game to just jump on and drive. But we'll touch on that right after this next point. One positive through the tire model does seem to be that it has way less slip angle than it has had in the past. So you can be a lot more aggressive with the direction change without the car floating and feeling like it has way too much slip through the middle of the corner. So I do appreciate that change that Le Mans Ultimate has made. It's been a game changer for me. But aggression wise, it still feels like it's above that aggression threshold where you have to drive more aggressively, which some drivers may enjoy more. And that leads me to the point that I was just making earlier of which game is easier, or which sim is easier to just jump on and drive. And I think Le Mans Ultimate is the game where an average driver with not a lot of experience can jump on and get comfortable straight away, because you can be a lot more aggressive. You can get away with a lot more in Le Mans Ultimate without negative consequence. So you can brake harder, you can be a lot more aggressive with your steering inputs. You don't have to be as refined or finesse through the center of the corner or through the braking phase even. So it is, I find, easier to just jump on and be at a reasonable level in Le Mans Ultimate and have a lot of fun with it. So I understand why. I look through my comments and I just see some people really, really love Le Mans Ultimate and some people love iRacing. And it's okay to love both, or to love them differently, or to not enjoy one and prefer the other. That's totally fine. I think it's actually healthy because it's good to have the option. And with real life drivers giving all this feedback, it's only going to help bring the two platforms closer to that middle ground. And we're never going to be perfect. You can never really make a simulator exactly one-to-one with real life. You're missing so many different factors like the seat of the pants feeling, the G-forces, and things like that. So you're going to have to make compromises. One might have a bit more feeling or texture in the road force feedback, and others might not. So, for instance, Le Mans Ultimate has a lot more texture and detail in the steering wheel. And in my opinion, it's too much versus what it's like in real life. And in iRacing, it feels about right. Maybe even sometimes it could be a bit more muted, which is what it technically feels like in real life. So it just depends what your flavor is. But like I said, I do think it is a little bit easier to drive Le Mans Ultimate for someone with not a lot of experience. So I can see why a user of the simulator platform or a game would prefer one over the other. And generally what I see is the more people get into sim racing, the more they tend to gravitate towards iRacing. That's just from my experience and what I hear. And probably just because I'm in that echo chamber, to be honest, of enjoying iRacing. Personally, I enjoy it a little bit more myself if I want to drive more refined and really precisely. But Le Mans Ultimate also is so much fun just to jump on and race. And it is close enough to the real deal where it's not going to completely ruin my technique in driving. I can appreciate both evenly. As I mentioned before, I tested both sims using the baseline setups, and I did that on purpose. I just don't want to mess around with anything. I wanted to just understand the car platform and the dynamics, the tires. I want to feel what, at the root, at the core of each game, what it feels like without influencing it with, like I said before, like with damper clicks here and there, ride height up and down. I just want to know what the car feels like out of the box, because most people, I would say, are driving baseline or fixed setups, and they're not going to have the expertise to fine-tune everything. With iRacing, I feel like there's a lot more variables being modeled, more subtle outcomes based on your inputs. You can brake slightly differently, turn in with a different steering angle, and just get a slightly different response every single time. In Le Mans Ultimate, on the other hand, it feels like it's working in a smaller operating window in the sense that there's only a specific amount of inputs that are making the car work correctly. And it's just very specific to these inputs. Also, you have to be a lot more aggressive with the way you turn, use the curbs, and it feels to me as if like I'm a soccer guy or like a football guy, both American and European football. And it feels like the difference between FIFA and PES, if you guys know the difference, if you've ever played those two games, or Madden and 2K. It's like one just feels like it's tuned for graphics, and the other one feels like it's a bit more refined for variable outcomes. So that's kind of like the difference to me. That's just the subtle difference. I feel like iRacing has a lot more variation in what you can do with your inputs, whereas LMU, there's a smaller operating window, and once you understand that window, then you can actually extract a lot of time, which is like my point before. What I was saying is it's a lot easier for a casual user to just jump on, have a good time, because you can get to that operating window a lot easier. At the end of the day, Le Mans Ultimate is still going through development, and it's come such a long way, especially with this last update on the tires. Feels so much better with less slip angle and you still being able to drive aggressively through the center of the corner. I do appreciate the sidewall movement through the center of the corner. You can really feel that sidewall wobbling, and it feels a bit more compliant through the center. But right now, iRacing just feels like a more mature game, and overall, I think it's just a more rewarding sim for the GT3 cars, especially with this update. Because I tell you, before this latest update on iRacing, I did not enjoy driving GT3. Now it's a completely different game. You can drive way more aggressively, and it is very rewarding. I want to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments if, first of all, you've tried both the AMG in iRacing and LMU, and also, what do you guys think of it? Which one do you prefer? Do you like LMU? Do you like iRacing? It's okay to like one over the other, like I said before. Also, don't forget, well, while you're down in the comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next video.